comprised of local community members, tasked with reviewing site plans and special use permits for consistency with the standards and criteria set forth in the City of Binghamton zoning code. Based on our total number of planning commission members, 5 members must be present to constitute a quorum. Tonight we have 7 members, which means we do have a quorum and can proceed. Just a housekeeping note, today's meeting is being recorded, both audio and video, for public records and private record. First item on our agenda is the roll call. Jack Janeka.
Present.
Arthur Roswell.
Present.
Mario DeFolio.
Here.
Paul O'Brien.
Here.
Joseph D'Angelo.
Here.
And Mara Cahill.
Here.
All right, second item on the agenda is the approval of the December minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, motion by Art, second by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed. All right, next item on the agenda are seeker determinations. In this portion of our meeting, the Planning Commission will be reviewing documentation provided by applicants for the first time. Applicants will be called to the microphone where will be asked to make a presentation describing their plans to the Commission. Commission members may then ask questions of the applicant to clarify any items that are unclear, and after all questions have been answered, the Commission will deliberate and then either set a public hearing date for the project or request additional information before the meeting. To all applicants that will be presenting tonight, we ask that you please state your name and address for our records before beginning your presentation. And ask that any member of your team who will be speaking, please give their name and address for our public records collection. Our first secret determination tonight is for the applicant, LaFonte Paving Company. Project address is 10 Jackson Street. And this is a site plan review and special use permit for a heavy construction contractor's yard in the I-2 light medium industrial district.
Good evening. My name is Ed Jen. I represent LaFonte Construction, or Devon Sennis, from 10 Jackson Street in Binghamton, and they're requesting permission for site plan approval and use permit for the establishment of a contractor's yard. It's the building at 10 Jackson Street is proposed that it'll be demolished, and its place will be expanded to for heavy equipment used in their construction business. The business has grown and they need some additional space, and the area will be fenced in with a vinyl slatted fence, so it'll be not seen from the street, so to speak. And all the entrances will be from the existing entrances for the Devon Sennis business on, which is off Jackson Street around the corner. And I should probably note, I probably shouldn't note it, but I'll tell you anyway. The initial application for this was made in January of 2018. And it's taken us just about a year to get to this point for various reasons. I should also mention here, for your information, the DEC has put out a letter to the owners and to the previous owners that the building cannot be used more than 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And the building that we propose to demolish, we cannot demolish it lower than the first floor. We must leave the concrete first floor in place. Because of the previous tenants that were in there in previous years, they contaminated the soil, and DEC does not want it exposed. So, and they don't want the buildings occupied 24 hours or even 8 hours. So that the 2 remaining buildings will be used for storage, and the building that we're proposing will be demolished to the first concrete floor. The rest of the yard will be gravel, and they'll use to park their construction equipment.
Meaning you're going to remove everything but the slab?
Yes.
Mr. Chen, you do understand that this matter went to court about a year and a half ago and was denied the development?
Yes, I don't quite understand. I saw that in the staff comments that COD is deemed historically significant, and yet if DEC will not allow occupancy, how can it be significant when nobody can use it?
You can still have historic significance.
Pardon?
You can still have historic significance.
Yes, I understand. And I have the information.
You do understand that as part of this, so even if you would get approval here, you would still have to get a hardship waiver to be able to demolish the building.
Yes, I understand.
All right, and Mr. Jen, you're asking for the waiving of the landscape buffer along Jackson Street and Moore Street, and for the allowal of storage equipment within the front yard setback being 20 feet in depth, where it's not permitted.
That's correct.
So those are planning commission. I think it's the planning commission.
When it's a special condition that applies only to a certain land use, the code allows the planning commission to waive or modify those special conditions.
And the new fence is going to, well, is it a new fence around the entire property?
I'm sorry.
Is it a new fence around the entire property?
Yes. Well, the existing fence will be extended so that none of this parcel will be accessible from the street.
Okay. And so there's no room to put a landscape buffer outside the fence? The fence will be right up against the property line?
Yeah. Correct. And if you haven't been there recently, there are 7 current commercial, industrial buildings surrounding this particular parcel. It's not in a residential zone, but there are 7 industrial buildings around it. So it'll fit in with the neighborhood, I guess.
And you know, so the images that are available on the site on Google show parking, cars parked, because there's no curbs along, it looks like on Mason Ave, there's cars parked all along there right up against the fence on the sidewalk. Is that going to go away with this change? Or?
As I understand, I met with the owners this morning that a number of those cars are their employees. So they were using not only for their construction equipment, but space for their employees to park as well.
And in the staff report, the planning department recommends that the curb cuts that will not be used should be eliminated or reduced to 30 feet in width if they are to be used. And the sidewalk should be restored. And that the applicant could use the city's matching funds for sidewalk repair. Would they be willing to do that? Are they willing to do that?
Well, there's no, I have an aerial that I took off the internet today. There's no sidewalks. If we put sidewalks, we'd be the only person with sidewalks. The city allowed where the dog shelter used to be. Within the last year, that was sold because they have a new building now. Those people were not required to do anything. They've also been allowed to park on the street, not on their property. They've been able to park their flatbeds and their other trucks on the street, whoever the tenant is in that particular building. So the city has placed no restrictions on the new owner of that particular building where the shelter used to be, for whatever reason, but they are. And they are not only are they not parking on the street, they're parking on Mr. DeVincentis' property as well, without any restrictions, apparently, to our knowledge, placed upon them.
More than likely, it's a pre-existing use. If we came back for site plan approval at this point, it would not be allowed.
I guess the answer to that is no, we're not planning to redo the sidewalk or eliminate the curb cuts.
Basically, we want to tear the building down. And it's really in bad shape. It should come down. All the floors leak. I'm concerned that it will fall because it's concrete slab. And with the water that's dripping throughout the entire building when it rains, the reinforcement to the concrete is corroded to a point where there's no bond between that and the concrete, so it's just a matter of time before the building will collapse. That's another reason why I don't understand, CAUD had an audit report for the demolition, and why they would still indicate it was historically significant in a building that's going to collapse. But they did.
Do you have any questions about concerns? Nothing? Next sidewalk?
For the record, there are sidewalks across the street. Jackson Street. It is a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood.
What about just replacing the sidewalk and curb on one of the streets, Mason Avenue? I hear what you're saying about Jackson Street, it's
I'm gonna,
consistent down there.
I'm sure I could convince the owner if we need to, but I'd like, this is a picture that I took off today. I marked on the picture by X's all of the industrial buildings that surround it, as well as the building which, with an X, or with a circle around it, is the one we want to demolish. It's very difficult from the aerial, except for the upper end of Jackson, because there's no houses, there's no sidewalks in this particular vicinity. There's no sidewalk.
All right. All right, any other questions or comments? I'll make a motion that the applicant's project is unlisted under seeker and that the planning commission should act as the lead agency. Second by Jeff, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed, and I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for the project at our February meeting for 5/20. Second by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
What was the date again in February, sir?
When is our meeting in February?
Please, the 11th.
That would be the final. So I can answer to the owners, on the 11th, after that hearing, they would get approval, yea or nay?
Potentially, depends on whether there's further questions. It is possible that there will be a vote that night. If there's further questions, it's always, the matters can be adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Dad, I thought you were retiring.
After this job. You gotta get old. I haven't, my wife thinks I'm old, but I haven't quite made it there.
Mr. Gary, one of the major issues that could hold it up at next month's meeting is the fact that there hasn't been a court approval. That would be one of the things that would might hold up.
What's the timetable on that?
They haven't submitted anything to court yet for the hardship. The applicant.
I have talked with CAUD at least 2 or 3 times since last January. So I'm surprised that they have continued to indicate it was a building of historic significance. But I have talked.
Historic significance isn't going to go away, because it's what the building was used for.
Yeah.
No matter whether your client has maintained the building to keep it in good shape is another issue. But its historic nature is going to keep going on.
I know Cloverdale Farms was in there at one time, but they also allowed McMahon Brothers in there at one time who contaminated the soil. So how the historic significance can carry over through contamination and hold up a project or a contractor who is growing in the city of Binghamton, who wants to extend his business, we're going to hold them up. I don't quite understand that.
We would like to see the letter from the DEC, because to our knowledge, they did say that there's contamination. They did not place any restrictions on the hours.
I have a letter from them that says that.
That's what we're just asking. If you have that letter, could you forward it to us? That'd be-
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You want me to leave now?
See you in February.
Thank you.
All right. Our next seeker determination is for the applicant NYSEG. Project address is 279 Court Street, and this is a site plan review for the construction of a 560 square foot essential services building in the C1 Service Commercial District. Anybody here from NYSEG? You just want to review the project? In general, we will just table the project. Can we table to the show up? Another table? All right, so I'll make a motion to take the NYSEG project out of turn and move it to the end of the agenda. Second by Jack, all in favor? 7 in favor, 0 opposed. All right. All right, the next portion of our meeting is public hearings. In this portion of our meeting, we'll be holding open public hearings to obtain public opinion in regard to specific projects up for review. Applicants will be asked to come to the microphone and make a brief presentation describing the project. For most projects, this is the second time we're reviewing your information, so it would be very helpful if you could please give us a brief overview of your project just to remind us of your planning, and then clearly identify any changes that have been made since the last time we saw you. When the applicant is done presenting and any clarifications of the review, we will open the public hearing and allow members of the community to speak about the applicant's proposal. After the commission has heard from all community members interested in speaking tonight, the public hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate. To our applicants, when your project name is called, please come to the microphone and start off by giving the name and address of any members of the applicant's team that is planning to speak for our public record. And anyone from the community that will be speaking in regard to a project tonight, please also start off by stating your name and address for our records. We also have a sign-in sheet tonight because of the number of people. If you could sign when you sit down to speak, that would also be appreciated. For anyone unfamiliar with the format of the public hearing, we'll be opening the microphone to solicit public comments about a specific project up for review. Public comments should be directed to the members of the Planning Commission and staff and not directed towards the applicant directly. It's not acceptable for any member of the public to enter into any form of discussion with the applicant directly during the meeting. The commission members will take note of any specific questions or comments that come up during the public comment portion of the meeting. When there are no additional community members wishing to speak about the project, the public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed and the applicant will be given a chance to respond. The commission members will ask the applicant to comment on any questions that were brought up by the community if they are relevant to our review. And it will again not be acceptable for any member of the public to attempt to enter into a dialogue with the applicant while they respond to questions or comments that arose during the public hearing. Just to very specifically certain about this. The time for us to hear from the public will be while the public hearing is open, and once it's closed, the public is here as an audience to the proceedings, and any member of the public who cannot abide by these rules will be asked to leave. Due to the large number of community members who appear to be here to speak about the projects tonight, we will ask that you please limit your comments to 5 minutes as well. All right, our first public hearing tonight is for the applicant Dean Consolidated LLC. Project address is 53 Main Street. This is a site plan modification review to an approved 2-unit dwelling, resulting in one 8-bedroom unit and one 4-bedroom unit in a C1 service commercial district.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Campbell. I'm an attorney with Hinman Harding Patel, and I represent the applicant. As the chairman indicated, this is a site plan modification. This is a project you all heard in October. Nothing has really changed except, just to refresh your recollection, the first floor is a 4-bedroom unit. That's not changed. There are actually 4 stories to this house. It has 3 habitable stories and then an attic. And when the owner got in there, he realized that the 3rd floor already does have a bathroom and clearly was set up for bedrooms. So what he's asked is to modify the previously approved 2nd floor, which was approved for 6 bedrooms, reduce that number to 5, and then add 3 bedrooms on the 3rd floor for a total of 8. Nothing else has changed with respect to the project. We are certainly understand that any modification will be subject to all the conditions previously agreed to and imposed by the Planning Commission. I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to that issue. But again, there have been no modifications. We have enough parking. Just to also be clear on the record, the 4th floor is unfinished attic space and will remain unoccupied.
Ms. Campbell,
Yeah.
is the 3rd story or the 3rd living floor, is it sprinkled to get down, or is there second means of egress to get out of that apartment?
You know, that was a question I asked the client as well. He said he had an engineer in there and there was not a requirement for sprinklering. So that's an issue that I'll have to take up with the code enforcement officer.
I just wanted to alert you to that.
Yeah.
That's typically something that comes up in these situations.
Right, and I did alert him to
Requires
that.
significant investment of money. That may be why it's set, the 3rd floor set empty for a while.
I don't know. I did alert him to that fact, and he assured me that he had investigated that
There are
issue.
factors when sometimes it is not, but most times it is required, especially when you're doing rehab like this.
Right. I don't know the rules of the building and fire code. I just know enough to tell people to check the rules. So apparently he did.
All right, staff recommended that one of the conditions of approval will be the use of the 2 storage rooms on the 3rd floor as bedrooms would result in a revocation of the site plan approval and permit.
We have no objection to that.
No problem.
I would suggest that you check with the code,
Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure that you're going to need either an outside egress from that 3rd floor or a sprinkler system.
I will advise him
So
of that.
an engineering firm in there telling me that is, I would check with the city, because I'm pretty confident that you're going to need some means to exit that 3rd floor part.
Thank you.
So what happens if you modify the approval and then it turns out you can't do or you don't want to do the 3rd floor?
Just revert back to the original approval.
Okay.
We'll have to get a building permit anyways to do the work, so it'll definitively be addressed at that point.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
the last meeting, there's been a change in New York State law. This would be a type 2 action, as the law stands today. In light of that, so you would have to make a motion to declare it type 2, and then proceed with your analysis.
And a type 2 requires no further analysis.
Type 2 for no further analysis.
Those January 1st new rules.
Yes.
Does the city lawyer have any desire on this, any preference?
I have a preference as your teammate, but the only preference, I guess, would be you probably do want to have something that flags this for review about whether there's something that needs to be addressed prior to.
I guess also to make clear, I mean, if you are to approve this modification, he has one of two choices. He complies with the building and fire code, whatever that may be, or he reverts to his prior approvals.
My one fear for the applicant is that he would have to come back for yet another site plan modification if he goes to the exterior and then going to make a site change.
Right, but he would have to do that.
He'd have to come
He'd
back.
have to come back. Fortunately, it's not a historic building. It's not in a historic district. It's on Main Street, right across from the old Giant. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure.
All right. Then I'll make a motion that the project is a type 2 action in seeker, and that because of it being a type 2 action, it does not require any further review under seeker. Second by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0. And I'll make a motion that the requirements for the modification to, I'm sorry. All right, so we still have to do a public hearing for it. All right, so this is a public hearing for the applicant Dean Consolidated LLC. Project address is 53 Main Street. The request for review is a site plan modification to an approved 2-unit dwelling resulting in 1 8-bedroom unit and 1 4-bedroom unit in the C1 Service Commercial District. If there's anyone here to speak about this project, please come to the microphone. All right. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing for the 53 Main Street project. All right, and then I'll make a motion that the requirements for a site plan modification have been met. Second by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, our next public hearing tonight is for the applicant Alexander Smith. The project address is 295 and 297 Front Street. This is a site plan review for the establishment of a minor used motor vehicle sales business, including the construction of an 8-space parking lot in the C1 Service Commercial District.
How are you? My name is Alexander Smith. I own Precision Automotive. Basically, I moved in about a year and a half ago and was unaware that the lot next door was not approved for commercial use. So we're looking to tear up both lots, 295 Front Street as well as the parking lot that's currently there, 297, and repave it. I'll make one lot. Obviously stripe parking spaces and all of it. And
All right. Are you currently using the building that's there, you're already running an automatic motor repair shop?
at 297, yes.
297. Okay. sell up to 4 vehicles on the other lot.
4 out at one time, right? Is the yeah. To be honest, I was only really looking to put 1 or 2 out there. Our main business is still going to be repair. It was only just to.
Okay. All right, the staff comments. It's recommended that a landscape plan be submitted featuring a minimum of 5 trees, 1 small medium tree at the western property line, 2 small medium trees along the southern property line, and 2 large trees along the western property line. Be submitted for review. Do you have any problem with that? Okay. And then wheel stops should be placed at all parking spaces. Arrows indicating the entrance exit should be installed on pavement. And you're familiar with the urban runoff reduction plan?
I'm not real familiar. I've been talking to the engineering department. I believe someone's been speaking to you about that, so I'm still a little unclear on what I have to do. But
okay. That'll be a condition of the approval. That was kind of, our hands are tied on that. You have to meet the requirements for the runoff reduction.
I mean, we planned on putting, grading it back towards the rear of the lot 295 and then putting a ditch in ground, kind of dry well, because there shouldn't be much runoff, but.
Okay. That sounds consistent with what other people have done.
And I have one more question about the parking blocks. The only issue I would have there is during winter when I plow, all the snow has to be plowed pretty much from 297 over to 295 then up because there's nowhere to push the snow. So all of the building takes up the whole width of the lot at 297. So the parking blocks would be an issue only because with them there I wouldn't be able to, snow removal would be an issue. I wouldn't be able to get it over to the other side of the lot to push it towards the back of that lot.
Okay. Anybody opposed to no parking real stops? Okay. All right. I should just yeah, is everything going to be, it's new pavement put down?
Yeah, it'll have to be.
Okay.
This all kind of started just because I was trying to redo the parking lot at 297 and then we found out that 295 wasn't even zone commercial, which I was unaware of. So then that's why there's 2 different site plans that were submitted already because one was submitted, then I had to rework one up for 295 in addition to that one.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions or comments? Concerns? All right, then I'll make a motion that the project is unlisted under seeker and that the planning commission should act as lead agency. Seconded by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed. And we'll open a public hearing for the project. So this is the public hearing for the applicant Alexander Smith. The project address is 295-297 Front Street. This is a site plan review for the establishment of a minor used motor vehicle sales business, including the construction of an 8-space parking lot in the C1 Service Commercial District. If there's anyone to speak about the project, please come to the microphone. All right. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'll make a motion for a negative declaration based on the following. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? No small impact. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? No small impact. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No or small impact. Will the proposed action have impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, lighting, or walkway? No or small impact. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies or public or private wastewater treatment utilities? No or small impact. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No or small impact. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? No or small impact. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No or small impact. And will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No or small impact. And based on those, I'll make a motion for that declaration. Second by Jack, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed. And I'll make a motion that the requirements for site plan review have been met with the following conditions. A landscape plan will be submitted to the planning department for approval. Arrows indicating the entrance and exit shall be installed at both parcels. An urban runoff reduction plan must be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. And a maximum of 4 sales vehicles may be located between the 2 parcels. All right. Seconded by Jack. All in favor? All right. 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck. All right. Our next public hearing is for the applicant, 31 Front Street, LLC. The project address is 31 Front Street. This is a site plan review and special use permit to convert an existing office building into a multi-unit dwelling with 4 residential units, 3 6-bedroom units, and 1 16-bedroom unit, with a total of 34 bedrooms in the C5 neighborhood office district.
Hello, Josh Bishop, managing member, 31 Front LLC. The only big change from last meeting is the landscape plan that we had done, the parking buffer. I've got Mike here to just answer questions on it. We provided it earlier today, so everybody should have got a copy. You want to run through the features?
I'm Michael Haas with Delta Engineers, Architects, and Surveyors. I'm a landscape architect, and we've been asked to provide screen planting along the north boundary of the property. So that screen planting is basically separating the parking areas of the 2 parcels. There's a 5-foot buffer strip there. There's some existing trees which we were able to pick up on the survey. All those trees will remain, and the planting is basically an asymmetric planting, combination of deciduous and evergreen shrubs, to include things like arborvitae, PJM, rhododendron, sea green, juniper, some plethora. I'm trying to work in some native species. There's some old lilacs towards the front street end of that planting bed, and we've incorporated some smaller lilacs. These are hybrids called Miss Kim, to help kind of fill in, creates a little more density to that planting. But it's fairly sunny, it gets some good southern exposure, and there'll be some layering of between the shrubs and the pavement. We're going to work in some daylilies. And in the end, the back end of that planting strip where the trees exist, we're going to add some Baltic ivy and encourage that ivy to grow up the trunks of those trees. There's some knotweed in that bed, which is a concern, it's a problem because it's an invasive species of plant. And we put in specifications to remediate the knotweed before the planting occurs, which means they have to either spray it or inject it to kill it. They got to harvest it and remove it, and then remove the soil mass. In this case, we're only going to go down a foot because obviously we don't want to impact the tree roots. So it's going to be difficult. But in the area the trees are, but there is no knotweed really in that whole back half of that landscape strip. It's all more towards the front. But it is an issue, and we've instructed Josh to be vigilant on that over the next couple of years if it does come back, to spray it and continue to knock it back so it doesn't overtake any of the beds. So really that's it, in terms of the landscape buffer that's required as part of the project.
Any questions on that portion? Okay, and then the only other thing I'd like to reiterate on the plans here, the property is comprised of the main mansion in the front here. This is on Front Street, and then you have this addition that was done in the back. The majority of our renovations are happening in the back portion here. We plan to leave all of the historical character of the front on the first and second floors, all the original woodwork, all the parlors. There's beautiful stained glass, a beautiful staircase. That's all staying just as it is, and we are preserving it just as it is. So just wanted to reiterate that. And then if there's any other questions, we do have plenty of parking, and the garbage plan is to have the roll-off dumpsters taken care of every week by ourselves.
All right. Any questions about the revisions? All right, well, I'm guessing there's a lot of people who have
I think so.
about this project. So, let's get right to it. So a reminder that we're asking that everybody try and limit their comments to 5 minutes. I guess we'd also ask that if you hear people saying things that you also were going to say, maybe it's okay. We would have heard it from the first few people that have said the same comment. It's just a thought. All right, so this is the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing for the project. Applicant 31 Front Street LLC. Project address is 31 Front Street. This is a site plan review and special use permit to convert an existing office building into a multi-unit dwelling with 4 residential units with a total of 34 bedrooms in the C5 neighborhood office district. If there's anyone who would like to speak about the project, please come to the microphone. We'll try and take turns and sit through everything.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tom Keene. My wife Molly and I reside at 54 Johnson Avenue on the west side of Binghamton. We have been both lifelong residents of Binghamton and have raised our 7 children there. I am also trustee of St. Patrick's Church, which is located immediately adjacent to the David's Mansion. And so I'm speaking tonight both on behalf of myself and on St. Patrick's by St. Patrick's Church. St. Patrick's is very concerned about this proposed project and the potential negative impacts it could have on the general operation and mission of our church. St. Patrick's campus is a busy one with many different ministries. We hold frequent masses, weddings, funerals, and social activities. These include religious instructions for school-age children, Bible study and fellowship activities, basketball and athletic programs for children and adults, senior social activities, and a very active outreach program to the homeless of our community. This outreach mission includes the provision of meals, clothing, and counseling, and offers showers to the homeless through Showers of Hope, which is a portable shower facility adjacent to the social hall entrance, which is approximately 20 feet from the west entrance of the David's Mansion. Our primary concern regarding the proposed project is that we believe it will be in serious conflict with our established ministries due to the density of people living at the David's Mansion. The vast majority of activities involving children occur in the hall and gym. We're concerned that the number of people associated with 34 bedrooms could result in a conflict with our parishioners and the ministries of the parish. Safety of the children is a major concern, who are frequently dropped off and picked up in the area. We have already had to contact the police with regard to the property located at 23 Front Street due to noise, drinking, improper congregation of individuals on that property. We are concerned that given the large outside yard at 31 Front Street, that regular gatherings of several hundred people could result. Secondly, although we understand that the parking requirement for this project is met with 9 parking spaces, this seems incredible to us. To suggest that 34 unrelated individuals living in one property only require 9 parking spaces is not realistic. Perhaps the parking regulation for multifamily units consider the families instead of unrelated individuals would be living together. In this case, given the population of unrelated individuals that will be attracted to this type of dense living situation, one-to-one parking should be required. Our next point is that from an aesthetic perspective, this mansion is in substantial disrepair. The application indicates that no exterior altercations are planned, so is exterior maintenance planned, and has an application for exterior repair been reviewed by COG. What altercations are proposed to the interior? It seems unlikely, given the necessary repairs on even just the outside of the mansion, that this cost could only be $65,000. If this property is not properly maintained and falls into disrepair, it is unlikely it will ever be returned to its grandeur. We find it extremely doubtful that the property can be converted to residential facility and the necessary outside repairs be conducted for only $65,000. In the past 5 years, St. Patrick's has spent over $2 million to preserve the historic nature of our property and buildings, and we would hope that the city would require the adjacent owner to properly maintain his property as well. We're also concerned about garbage. Currently, there are a large overflowing dumpster located in the parking area. How is garbage going to be controlled with 34 people living in the building? We're concerned with traffic. Exiting onto Front Street is treacherous and will be substantially more dangerous with the volume of traffic likely associated with a project of this density. Further, the 50 Front Street project, which will add an additional 122 housing units within 100 yards from this project and add to the traffic concerns. We requested a full traffic analysis be provided to assess this issue. Perhaps removing parking spaces on Front Street will be required or recommended to improve site visibility when entering and exiting the site. However, removing street parking will be detrimental to the established offices on Front Street, as well as Roberson Mansion. Special permit standard number 6 asks you to evaluate whether this proposed project interferes with traffic and abutting streets. Regardless of the stated parking minimums, the number of bedrooms per unit, and pursuant to the criteria for special permit issuance, we at St. Patrick's question if this proposal adequately protects the public health, safety, and welfare. Is the proposal compatible with existing adjoining development? Is adequate off-street parking provided? Does the proposal comply with the comprehensive plan? To each of these questions we submit the answer is no. An apartment with 16 bedrooms is not an apartment. It is a rooming house, per the definition contained in the city's zoning regulation. This project is designed for one population only, students. Nothing wrong with students, but it violates paragraph 2.2 land use, which encourages floor plans and multifamily developments that are suitable for a variety of end users. In summary, conversion of dwelling units resulting in more than 4 bedrooms has been identified in the zoning regulation as something that requires heightened review, a special permit. Per the zoning code section 410-29G, the intent in evaluating an application which creates this type of density is to establish standards to reduce the overcrowding of dwelling units and buildings and overly dense development of neighborhoods. It notes that when creating more than 4 bedrooms per dwelling unit, issues arise concerning overcrowding, parking, open space, and neighborhood character. In addition, each use requiring a special permit is deemed to be sufficiently distinctive in terms of its nature, location, and its potential impact on the general welfare of the surrounding area as to warrant special review and evaluation of each individual permit application per code section 410-35. The special permit process is meant to evaluate each project on its merits in connection with the surrounding area. As is evidenced in your agenda tonight, there are other locations nearby where dense residential occupancy may be acceptable. However, these are predominantly near to commercial activity and services. This particular project, with the requested unit density located adjacent to our church and across the street from Roberson Mansion, is simply not appropriate and fails to meet the established special permit criteria. We thus ask this application be denied. Lastly, I would just say we recognize that change is inevitable. I personally, in my years here, have seen a lot of change in the city of Binghamton, and change can be really good. We applaud the recent efforts in downtown Binghamton. I think it's starting to come back. However, change can also be bad as well. You merely need to look at the former Ramada Inn on Front Street and the historic residence located directly to the south at 63 Front Street, which is the site of the former Prue Insurance business, to see an example of what were once beautifully kept properties have been allowed to deteriorate. We want to make clear that we are happy to see interest in the Davidge Mansion and the possibility that an investment will be made in it to preserve its historical charm and grandeur. We have no objection to utilization of the mansion by residential inhabitants. We do have grave concerns, however, with the density of this project and its incompatibility with our church and the surrounding area. We respectively ask that you obtain additional information and the study regarding the potential traffic issues we have raised. Further, we ask that the board carefully evaluate the criteria of your special permit process. We strongly believe that this project is not in the best interest of the citizens of the city of Binghamton. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Mee. I'm an artist, and although I live in Endicott, I have a long relationship with Front Street. I used to visit elderly relatives on Front Street as a child. I've been in and out of Robertson Memorial my entire life, and now I'm regularly on Front Street for medical treatment. Mr. Kane admirably laid out many of the drawbacks to developing the Decker Mansion in the way proposed. So I'm not going to dwell on the issues of congestion, noise, traffic, parking, litter, and general nuisance. I think he covered those admirably, and others will, I no doubt, second them. This looks to me like a matter of principle, frankly. It appears that if this proposal is approved, an individual will benefit, but that the neighborhood will suffer. If you walk up and down Front Street, you will see that a number of property holders, such as number 35 near Leroy, have spent a lot of money maintaining and improving their properties. Number 35 has been impeccably restored to 1893. I watched it being done. The carpenter made those spindles for the railings by hand rather than going to Lowe's. And I think it would be wrong, frankly, for the people who have made efforts such as that to suffer in order to benefit an individual. I'm not against college students. I was one myself, bachelor's degree, a couple of master's degrees. One of the master's degrees was at Harvard, and I got to know some people who were studying urban planning. One evening in 1992, I was sitting in Tommy's Lunch on Auburn Street with my friend Lexi Stanton, and we were talking about urban planning, and I was curious about it. And she said, "Mike, it really comes down to one idea. You ask yourself, will this change benefit the neighborhood? If it will, then you talk about, should we move up the paving project? Do we need to put in a turn lane, or can we simply retime the traffic lights? But if the answer to the question, will this change benefit the neighborhood, is no, then there's nothing to talk about." Thank you.
Hello, Danny Krantz, West Side City Councilwoman. Josh Bishop is my friend, and I called him because I wanted him to know that tonight I will not be supporting this, because I'm not here to help out my friends. I am here to be City Councilwoman, and I'm here to support the residents on the West Side. And I have had unanimous messages sent to me that they do not want more student housing. and I stand with my residents. I've also asked for any ideas that they might have. We have some wonderful ideas that came in that I've been speaking with Josh, and I will be interested in working with anyone who wants to work with me on this. An art gallery, historic community, maybe past, might want to put a little museum in there. I also contacted Binghamton University to see if we can get a satellite for Binghamton in there with the OCC. They're very interested in that. And that would be something that can connect the residents to the students better and hopefully bring in some labs and 24-hour Wi-Fi and a safe place for our students to go, because I also believe that we should have more for our students than just bars at night. Just please listen to our residents as they're speaking, because this is their home. And when it's your home, you know, that's your quality of life. We're not talking about just students, we're talking about residents that live here 24/7 every day of the year. This is their life. This is where they chose to put their home, where they chose to raise their families, and where they are paying their taxes as property owners. So please respect our residents, and please listen to them, and remember that they are human and that they have feelings, and they deserve the respect from everyone that we would want for ourselves. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Roger Luther. I'm here as a representative of the Preservation Association of the Southern Tier, PAST. And just for the record, last Friday, PAST submitted a package of documents to the Commission. And in that package, it includes some historical and architectural details on the structure. It talks about our position of opposition to this plan. And it includes 21 pages of comments submitted online by the community, all opposed to this proposal. The Davidge Mansion is sometimes referred to as the Decker Mansion. It stands as one of Binghamton's most visible and intact local landmarks. It was designed by one of this area's greatest architects, Sanford O. Lacey. And as a matter of fact, the year that he designed this house, he was designing our Carnegie Library. It was built in 1903, and since then it has been almost continuously occupied. The interior is well preserved. It is designated as a local landmark. PAST firmly opposes the rezoning of this property, which, as I understand it, would allow 31 students to live in the building, with 16 of those students living in the actual mansion. There are two main reasons that we oppose this. First of all, local landmark status provides guidelines for preserving a building's exterior, but there is no protection of the interior. With this property, like many of our landmark homes, the interior is just as significant as the exterior, and you can see some here. That's the carved woodwork, grand staircase. There's a magnificent leaded glass dome above the staircase, which is actually coming up from the floor in the ballroom on the 3rd floor. There's another reason we oppose this, and that is it. Over recent years, several of our vintage properties have been converted to student housing. Many are not being maintained. For whatever reason, they are allowed to deteriorate. This is the Franklin Whitney House, just up the street from the Davidge Mansion. It was built in 1840 by a son of Binghamton pioneer Joshua Whitney. Historically speaking, it just doesn't get any better than that. It is designated as an historic landmark. This is how it looked a few years ago. 2017, it was purchased and is now student housing. This is what it looks like today. With the Whitney House, well, I'll show you a few more. There's some close-ups.
That's the front porch. Back porch. So with the Whitney House, one of Binghamton's most visible and most historic mansions has become a blight on the neighborhood. The property is not kept up, there is a lack of basic maintenance, and even more serious, there is physical damage to the structure. And who knows what has been done to the interior. Because of these concerns, PASS is firmly opposed to the rezoning proposal and respectfully offers the following suggestions. 1, deny the current application to rezone the property for multi-unit housing. 2, consider developing a program to protect interior features of our most precious local landmarks. And 3, enforce existing regulations and hold property owners accountable for the ongoing deterioration of Binghamton's architectural heritage. And just finally, on December 29th, PASS posted the notice of this public hearing on social media. To date, there has been more than 830 comments online. And I got to tell you, I've been spunked with these. My phone's going off all the time, every time a comment comes in. I haven't looked at them all, but I haven't seen one yet that is in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Charlie Ackerman, live at 192 Front Street, Binghamton. I'm a real estate broker in the area and represent Josh Bishop as well as the seller of this property. And let me tell you, the beauty of the property is what we want to preserve. That is what gives it value. We're paying almost $1 million for this property. Not because we want to turn it into the Tower House. We had a fraternity approach us to rent it out at an incredible price, and we turned them away because we are spending a great deal of money to buy this property and have no desire to see it demolished. You don't just spend that kind of money and put pearls before swine. You can't just let any old person into it that wants party space or wants speakers put in. I do plenty of that property. I sell lots of those, but this particular one is about being an aesthetically beautiful, preserved piece of property. We walk through it, and it's the leaded glass dome that catches your eye. It's the woodwork. It's the entryway. And we looked at it a dozen different ways, and I'll tell you, I showed it to a dozen different clients. Most of them come through and want to chop it up into one-bedroom apartments, or this or that, and really that is our other use. You know, an art gallery would be fantastic, but at almost $1 million, I don't know how we would pay the $30,000 a year tax bill on the property, let alone the $1 million price tag. I'm sorry?
Tax exempt.
Well, even better, take more money off the tax roll. What we want to do is we want to preserve the mansion as it is, and the only way that we can do that is with using the house, the mansion portion, as a single unit. We've cut out apartments in the rear, and we looked at it 16 different ways on how we can get the best use to preserve the space. And you know, frankly, that is the most important part, is to preserve the space so that we can rent it out for highest value year after year after year. You know, we've also been talking, and maybe the developer can speak to it more, but you know, we want to keep staff on site to come in every couple weeks to come through the property, to clean the property, to make sure that the property is maintained the way that it should be. You know, the previous owner, as to the parking that the gentleman from St. Patrick's brought up, you know, there were 64 people that work there. There is more than a 30-car parking lot associated with it. Is that right?
That's 26.
26-car parking lot that's associated with it. The former tenant had 64 tenants that were in there, and there didn't seem to be a traffic issue that was caused by it. Not to mention, this property has been marketed for commercial use for almost 2 years without a viable tenant coming along. There are very select neighborhoods that work for student housing. This is one of them. And unfortunately, though Binghamton is growing beautifully, there are not a lot of tenants that commercially can find use of a space this large, or else it wouldn't have sat on the market for 2 years with multiple brokers. This, I believe, to be the highest and best use, and I know the developer very well, and I know that he's done beautiful work. And as the gentleman from past, I completely agree that we need to preserve these buildings. And if you look at the press building downtown, what is now the printing house, which was developed into student housing, that building was brought from rubble back to a significantly beautiful piece of property with an entryway that is second to none. And it doesn't get graffitied. It doesn't have Christmas lights dangling from it. It doesn't have spray paint on it, because there's a responsible landlord that's involved in the property. And I know that the developer that's looking at this has restored a number of properties throughout Binghamton. He turned around the Windermere on Washington, which was a single room occupancy, and probably had more police calls on it than just about any property in Binghamton. Full of some very suspect tenants, and he turned it into a viable, producing property that does not get police calls anymore, even though there's college kids living in there. The fire alarms get set off, but they get set off in all the new developments because of new fire code regulation, but burning bacon and such. But it doesn't have the same issues that it had. He's done a beautiful job throughout the community, helping to rebuild this community. He wants to establish a long-term property here, not something that's a turn and burn. The house, the Whitney house that was shown, that property went into foreclosure. That property was then bought by the students that lived there. One of the parents bought it. And maybe the real question here is holding landlords responsible for keeping their properties in disrepair, and not assuming that everyone that wants to come in to invest in our community is doing so with the worst of intentions. And as for this neighborhood, this is the student housing neighborhood. I don't have the exact figures, but I would venture to say that we're less than 30% owner-occupied in that direct vicinity. These are where the students live. This is, and they are as much a part of our community as any of us. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, my name is PJ Daly. I own the building at 35 Front Street, which is 2 doors down from the proposed project. Sorry, thank you. Did everybody hear? I own the building at 35 Front Street, and I'd just like to paint a little picture for you. On Monday mornings when I arrive at work before my first client, I'm picking up tobacco, garbage, food, red Solo cups, and the occasional condom. I don't think this is okay, but it's how I start Monday mornings. Next door to me is a financial building, Covenant Wealth. On the other side is an orthodontist. Somehow I do not think that they're responsible for the Solo cups. Across the street is the River House, Aswad and Ingram, Robertson Mansion, and then the Decker. So you know my neighborhood, and I disagree with the last speaker. This is not a student neighborhood. It may be the last block on Front Street that doesn't have students. Up the street, the photographs that Roger Luther showed us, were probably taken recently. What does that mean? That the kids are on vacation. So during the school year, when they've got their couches and their beer pong tables and their zillions of red Solo cups that blow down the street where I'm picking them up Monday mornings, I think that if we turn the Decker Mansion, the Davidge Mansion, into student housing, it will spoil what's left of a very beautiful building. And it will make it very hard for me to go to work. Why is that? Well, these houses were all built when people didn't drive cars. My house was built in 1892. The architect was Bar 2, and although it's not a significant Bar 2 work, it is a Bar 2 work, and I've worked very hard to maintain its significance. In fact, the porch that we put on cost $25,000, and my partner in the building wanted to kill me. But it was really important that we put on a porch that matched with the historical significance of the building. I have 8 offices in the building. We're social workers, psychologists. So it's not big rent. I'm not bringing down big student rents. I'm paying off a mortgage. Our clients, some in wheelchairs, some with oxygen, some with baby carriers, some with dogs, disabled, elderly, and all sorts of people in between. We need the parking out front of my building. We have 5 spots in back. That's really for staff only and a disabled person should they come. So it concerns me when we talk about adding 34 cars. I understand that the parking regulation is doesn't match up with the number of cars. So technically, I understand that there's enough parking, but I know from having Save Around down the street that they will be parking in front of my building. And now that the meters are gone, it's 2-hour parking, there's really no one to enforce that. So the three businesses on my side, the financial, me, and the orthodontist, we have clients coming in and out. They're coming every hour, they're coming every half hour, they're leaving, they're not staying. Students could be parking all day. Save Around was parking all day, and why would they do that? Because it's convenient. It's easier to park on the street, and I can zoom off than it is in my lot, when I'm squeezing in. So I wanted to bring up those issues because it concerns me not only about my clients, but it concerns me ultimately about my business. That if I can't have clients come, if they say, hey, we don't want to come, we can never park. And by the way, there were loads of complaints in my building every week about the Save Around people. So many complaints that I said I have to do something about this, and I went and visited the traffic board. It all happened shortly before they moved out, which was last May. And so I knew that the next potential owner of the building might bring traffic problems for the rest of Front Street, and that's partly why I'm here. So, we have a historical building. You asked us not to repeat that stuff. The building is beautiful. Roger Luther did a great job. I would be very sad. I own a historical building. I live in a historical house on Tommy Kane's block of Johnson Ave. And I think it's really important that we do what we can to maintain them with historical integrity. And I do believe, I was a student in this community too. I lived in student housing. I always left it better than I found it, but I don't believe most students are like that. And I don't believe there's much governance of students or student housing. Every 2 weeks, no, you need to have someone living on site in order to manage, almost like a dorm. And it doesn't really feel like apartment housing, it feels like dormitory or boarding house. So thank you. I think you must understand that I strongly object to this proposal.
My name is Barry Kaufman. We live at 1 Vincent Street on the west side for the past 42 years. We have seen many changes in the city, especially in the neighborhoods. The west side is one of the assets of the city, but due to all the rental conversion, it's taking its toll on the neighborhoods. Tonight, you're going to vote on 3 separate projects, including the Davidge Mansion. Within those 3 separate projects, there'll be 76 new bedrooms within a 2-mile radius. It's a very simple solution. Besides being the Davidge Mansion being a historical building, The main problem in Binghamton, and it's getting worse, is the city is oversaturated with rental units, especially student housing. This is having an adverse effect on all the neighborhoods. These developers or investors will tell you they will do nothing to the front of the buildings and it will remain the same, but they will take these beautiful and sometimes historical buildings, carve them up with no regard for the integrity of the building or the neighborhoods that surround them. Because of the glut of rental units, good neighborhood landlords who have been here for 10, 20, and 30 years have to lower their standards and rent to people they wouldn't ordinarily rent to just to pay their expenses. This also contributes to the decline of the neighborhood. And you can't tell me, the gentleman spoke about the press building. I'm sure they did a fantastic job in there. I understand it's only half full. There are vacancies all over the city. Because we have a glut of houses on the market, they can't fill them. So what is going to happen with these people? They're going to add 76 bedrooms to the city. There's vacancies all over the city. How are they going to do it? They're going to have to lower their standards, and that we don't want. And what happens is the city will become a Section 8 city. When you vote on these projects, you are determining the future of the city and what direction the city is going in. Enough is enough, whether it's the Davidge Mansion, the McDevitt Funeral Home, or any other rental projects. We do not need any more rental units in the city of Binghamton. Do you want to preserve these buildings for future generations or destroy them so someone can make a profit? Therefore, I'm asking you to vote no on all three projects. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Zane Johnson. I'm from a BU club. We're a queer society. We're the Rainbow Pride Union. After seeing the building, I thought that it was very beautiful, and that if it was made into student housing, that it would be a great option for our club. A few of my friends, I've been in the area for about 3 years now, have been in some of the renovated buildings, one of them being the printing house, and they've loved it. And if there is a problem with the vacancy, that might help with the traffic flow. If there's a problem with the vacancy, that might help with the traffic flow. It's a pretty large, I'm like nervous. It's a pretty large space, and I think that it would easily be able to occupy the entire building. There's a large parking lot, so that's amazing. And woodwork is really beautiful. That's about all I have to say. I just think it would be a great place for our group.
All right. Thank you.
My name is Ruth Levy. I live at 15 Bennett Avenue, and I am a long-term member of the Preservation Association of the Southern Tier, past, and I have also served as a member and chair of the city's Commission on Architecture and Urban Design, COG. I would like to begin my remarks with a quote from one of the city's official documents, Historic Design Guidelines, City of Binghamton, New York, adopted October 2011. Quote, "One of the greatest threats to the historic character and identity of Binghamton is the slow and incremental loss of historic fabric, whether an entire block, an individual building, or a character-defining feature of one structure. The Davidge Mansion at 29 Front Street is designated by the city as a local landmark. The conversion of the building to housing for 34 students represents a clear and present danger to this property. We have seen deterioration of the Whitney home at 63 Front since it was converted to student housing. This building was built in 1828 by the family of Joshua Whitney, founder of Binghamton. It doesn't get more important than that. Take a look at that deteriorated balustrade and the refuse on the front lawn. I shudder to think of what's going on inside. Talk to a developer who's had to sue the parents of students who have abused his property. Consider the student at number 6 Riverside Drive who has all fall been drying his underwear in the front window of one of our main buildings on our main thoroughfares. The roof of this building is often used as a site for student parties. Picture students partying on the roof of the Davish mansion. Keep in mind that gorgeous woodwork and the stained glass ceiling. With parking for up to 34 cars, will the owner request paving over the lawn on the south side of the building? Previously, this parking proposal requested by a prior owner was denied by COG. The city needs to find inspiration in the work of the First Ward Action Council, which has taken distressed property and restored it to attractive housing and increasing the viability of the city. With the indication that student housing has reached a glut on the market, why would we jeopardize one of our grandest buildings across from one of our finest public institutions, Roberson Mansion?
Hello. My name is Jack Sperling. I live at 80 Riverside. I co-own and practice in 14 Leroy Street, right around the corner from the Davish block. I wrote you a letter. I think you have it, right? Okay. These comments are kind of an addendum to the letter that you have from me. In the mid-60s, I was in the first batch of Harper students who won permission from the dean. It's even funny to say it now. Who won permission from the dean to move out of the dorms and into the community. In 1969, along with like-minded students, faculty, and community people like Stan Reiter. Does anyone remember him? He sat around this table and I believe is president. So with these people, I founded BU's off-campus college, OCC. In a few years, OCC became a national model for meeting the needs of students not living in on-campus dormitories and helping students and their community neighbors do well together. Those blue buses, now blue-green buses, all driven by off-campus students that you've seen around on the streets for the past 50 years. That was one of our first projects. The proposal you're considering today and the many similar ones you've seen do just what we didn't want to happen in Binghamton. We didn't want to happen, A, developers gouging students with exorbitant rents, which end up as the current student debt crisis we're hearing a lot about now, and just as importantly, distort the local housing market at the expense of community people. There's a lot more money to be made housing 53 students than several local families. What we didn't want to happen, B, developers shoehorning big student housing into neighborhoods without enough consideration or even no consideration of the impact on these neighborhoods and the folk who live in them. All of which builds the backlash against off-campus students that we were working so hard to avoid. Oh, how nice to meet you. Thank you for helping to raise my rent. Or maybe thank you for lowering my property values. Just love picking up your red cup Sunday morning, dears. And now you've just taken my parking space. For these reasons, and just as importantly, the reasons that I've outlined in the letter to you, I urge you to vote no on this neighborhood toxic, student unfriendly proposal. Fie on it, fie, vote no.
Hi, Karen Eike. I'm actually from Appalachian. But I wanted to come and speak to you tonight because I love historical housing. Savannah is one of my favorite places. Savannah at one point was heading to be a slum. They rebuilt. It's now a world-class tourist destination. Binghamton has its own festivities with the Speedy Fest, the golf tournament. We can be that. We can work harder. We deserve better. This is like the jewel of the community. This house, this is not the printing house that was a brick building that different floors converting to apartments. This is a mansion. This is gorgeous. This needs to be preserved. If you lose it, you can't get it back. On another area of this conversation, my daughter was a SUNY student who did live in off-campus housing, and in fact, in one of the properties owned by the applicant. Maybe he's getting his $1 million because I had to go to the Attorney General's office to get our security deposit back. And we left it cleaner than we found it. I know, I helped. My daughters got in trouble for cleaning from their roommates and stuff, so it's just like that, we left it pristine, but we had to go to the Attorney General's office to get it 90 days later than it was due. So that's something too. You want to be careful of the character of the people you're doing business with. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Webster, and I live at 12 Edward Street. I haven't come here to argue either for or against this proposal. There have been many articulate people who have been doing that. What I'm here is to respectfully request that you simply table this application as well as the one at 8891 Front Street, and you step back and take a step back and you consider its impact on Front Street and the demand for student housing in Binghamton, as other people have talked about, and also that you take the time to develop a balanced housing plan for the city of Binghamton that will accommodate the needs of all of our citizens, students, young professionals, older professionals, families, and retirees. The public response has been enormous, as you can see by the crowd here. As you must know, Roger Luther came up with a lot larger number than I did because he just did a better job. But I've got 170. Altogether, I've got 258 comments, which I printed out, and I'd like to put in the record. And these do not count the comments on the comments, so I think that number would double or triple with that. I want to say how much this shows about how the people care about our community, and you can also see by all the people that are coming here. I think you owe it to this public to consider what the future of Front Street will be like. We need to be better stewards of our wonderful historic heritage, our architectural heritage, and the Whitney House is a prime example of where we failed totally. You'd be doing the public who cares so much, you'd be doing us all a huge favor if you developed a policy that would take care, that you would table this request and give this the consideration and careful thought that it deserves. Thank you very much.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Michelle Iacovelli. I live at 19 Front Street. I have grown up in the southern tier. My family's been in business as long as I can remember, and probably before I was born, and as well as many people in this room. I bought a condominium at 19 Front. I've lived there since 1996. I lived on Front Street when it was Mayberry, or used to be like Mayberry. I have since been sandwiched between two student housing projects that were, 6 Riverside and 23 Front. I have a bird's eye view of the back section of the Decker Mansion. I can't tell you, I hear all these people say how great it is, how great it would be to live on Front Street. You don't have no idea what it's like to live on Front Street until you're actually living, breathing, and watching everything that goes on. I could tell you more that goes on than these students' parents, than the campus superiors, than off-campus living, than most people. In fact, I brought pictures taken from the outside of my window, and I would love for everybody to look at them. Red Solo cups lining, which we've heard about. Indecent exposing oneself. Garbage, trash, underage drinking. I've reached out to off-campus VP in charge of off-campus living, gotten the runaround. Reached out to my local Binghamton police force, turn a blind eye, never even acknowledge my phone calls. My mouth is getting dry. It continues on and on. I mean, I live in the property. I've seen how people renovate property and trash it. I have respect. That's why I moved to Binghamton. I strongly oppose this, being that I live next door to student housing already. I can only imagine. You're talking about putting this beautiful landscaping up. These students traipse through the parking lot to get to through the church, through 23 Front, through the back of the Decker Mansion. It's beyond words. It takes more than 5 minutes to talk about everything that goes on. And I'm looking at the luxury apartments going up. I see the frat house conditions that go on constantly. I mean, it's one thing to say Front Street is designed for student housing. No, it's not. It never was. And I have emails that I've sent to the downstate owner of the property who tells me to go to my Binghamton police force, but yet I go to my police force and they send me back to the owner. It's a vicious cycle. Nobody's dealing with it. And the last thing I want to see is more student housing coming in where it's going to get trashed. It's going to get trashed, and that beautiful property is going to end up like every other property on Front Street. I could say so much more, but like I said, I could show you emails that I've sent the owner to if you'd like to look at those, but I'd be curious what you think of those photographs. I'd like to show Josh here because his property is visually in the line of some of those shots that you're looking at. So that could become his property too.
Hello, I'm Stephen Whitman. I'm not a resident of here in Binghamton, New York, actually, but my beautiful wife here behind me has this small business called Slaughter's Fine Art Studio on Clinton Street. We own a home in Vestal, New York, and actually I was sitting up there deciphering if I want to do this or not because I don't do politics, I do art. I'm a local artist, and actually I've been sitting here deciding what to say about all this. 3 weeks ago, I came across a song called Ragged Old Flag, and it was by Johnny Cash. And a lot of people in the city of Binghamton, New York did not know that Johnny Cash actually wrote this song. And I just got put into an art show called Art of Binghamton. Now, maybe this has nothing to do with the Decker Mansion, but what I'm coming to find out is that the city of Binghamton has to do with everything. And what I'm coming to find out is that the city of Binghamton is a beautiful place. And what I'm also coming to find out, there's actually a place called Arlington Hotel. And I didn't know this place existed. And the only way I found that out is going to share my post that I did in front of the courthouse one night on January 9th, the same date that Johnny Cash came to town and actually ran into an old man and bumped into him. And this old man actually influenced Johnny Cash to write one of the most iconic songs in the United States of America. And it went on to be broadcast into the Super Bowl. And here I am, 34 of age, making a video about this song. And now here it is, 4,000 views later, 50 shares. And I'm gonna go on with my wife right here behind me, and we're gonna make this painting. And what I'm getting at is, I didn't know what to do with this painting. And I talked to my wife, and she's been here a lot longer than me. And the reason it is because I spent my whole life as basically an orphan, because my parents didn't want me. I spent 26 foster homes, 3 different states and 13 different schools. So when I hear, student housing and things, and I hear about, coming in and doing these construction works, I normally keep an open mind. I'm not always about, raising the pitchforks and bringing in the torches. I'm always keeping an open mind. And I went past the Decker Mansion because my wife, she's photographed. She's a professional photographer. She's always taking these beautiful photos, and she showed me. And I actually went past it today and I looked at it. It was the most beautiful place I actually saw. Now, you gotta forgive me because I'm actually, I'm not used to doing this, but where I'm going with this is, to go in here and I just saw these beautiful photos because I've never been in here. I've only been to Binghamton for 2.5 years, and I myself started my journey here as an artist 2.5 years ago. And that's one of the reasons I'm actually doing this painting. And it's already caught attention. Wounded Warrior Project actually reached out to us the other day. They want us to come in and actually work with them. My wife behind me is actually, she does fundraising. We work with the city of Binghamton. We help people. We've always helped people. We give back to the city of Binghamton. This is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I actually used to be a person, forgive me for saying this, I actually used to be a person that actually used to knock Binghamton down. And forgive me for saying that. I actually, I used to be a person until I actually took a walk. And I didn't realize how beautiful this place really is. You guys have a beautiful city. You guys really do. Binghamton is gorgeous. It truly is. It's a beautiful city. And I'm out there, and I'll tell people, you need to go walk around Binghamton. What about, Clinton Street? We live, our studio is on Clinton Street. I tell people all the time, Clinton Street's a bad street. There's no such thing as a bad street. There's bad people. Okay, that's what you need to understand. There's never such thing as a bad street or a bad building. There's bad people. Okay. Now, I'm not against anybody coming in and trying to make a business for themselves. Well, I'm against ruining history. Herbal renewal. Okay. Herbal renewal
came in and destroyed the Arlington Hotel. Okay? Yes, Urban Renewal came in and destroyed Arlington. Earlier today, what people don't understand, when I mentioned the ragged old flag, I had the coolest conversation in the world. I actually come to find out who that old man was that inspired Johnny Cash. I now know who that old man is. And I have his name. Well, guess what? He died in New Hampshire in a VFW home. He's no longer with us. Johnny Cash used to go down to Washington Street at 114 called Patty's Ale House. And actually used to be a mayor in the city. I believe she was a female. And she brought in Urban Renewal, and she actually had an idea. She actually started doing reconstructive ideas. And the owner of the bar is actually still alive. And I actually heard the coolest stories of Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Grateful Dead coming in here, and they got inspired by these guys from the VFW and everything else. It was the coolest conversation I ever heard. I'm gonna be honest, I'm like geeking out. You gotta forgive me. It was the coolest thing I ever heard, because I actually heard, who this gentleman is, and we're gonna pay tribute to him when we make this painting. And if it's money that the Decker Mansion needs, I just ask my wife's permission, because a happy wife is a happy life. It's true, we will donate 100% of the proceeds to the Decker Mansion if that's what it takes. Of the painting. And we have friends, we have friends in, the higher power. And if I have to, reach out to Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, whoever you got, I've seen crazier things happen, man. I grew up in a foster home. I got told in my life I was going to be a loser, and here I am being an artist. And I'm about to make one of my iconic heroes painting right here from the city of Binghamton, New York, where he wrote Ragged Old Flag, with the United States of American flag, man. To me, that's pretty cool. It's the greatest thing in the world. And I like to give back to the city of Binghamton that way, and that's my way of giving back. And, I like to help out. And, maybe we can make this art gallery. I heard a conversation of, $30,000 taxation. Well, I guess I better start making some prints and start selling for $20 a piece. And, if I have to give that to you guys, then so be it. So, there you go.
My name is Jim Bryden. I've lived here for roughly 50 years. I live on Binghamton Street on the west side. And I'm an architect that has done a significant amount of work in the area, which I'm proud to say much of my work had to do with preservation. And a significant amount had to do with housing. I've seen every form of housing you can imagine in our little community. To give an example, so I said some people here wonder about all developers creating messes or whatever, but my significant developer that I worked with was First Ward Action Council. Most of you know that organization. This city is very lucky to have such a not-for-profit. They have developed a significant amount of property. What I'm most proud of, just to give an example of a neighborhood and housing that looks like it should be demolished, was the project across the street from the health department. It's easy enough to notice these buildings. There are 5 significant Queen Anne buildings in a row. So we rehabbed 8 of those houses into a significant affordable housing for families. It can be done. As to do with the damage, to get to one point, let's say as an architect wondering what would I do with that building, it certainly does not have to be student housing, because nobody can figure out what else to do with it. It could easily be used for the same kind of things that First Ward Action Council does. Any kind of senior housing, affordable housing, assisted living housing, and so forth. My personal favorite would be to convert it into a hospice. I think we all know that there still is a demand for senior housing. I doubt that there's a demand for student housing, unless
the BU significantly increases the number of students there. There are many, many properties that they're not able to fill with students, which hurts the bottom line of the developer. Therefore, the developer needs to cut costs in a variety of ways to just pay the taxes in a way. So, what I've been witnessing are many of the houses on Riverside Drive, which are considered mansions in themselves. Some are still attractive on the outside. I've been inside most of these, and you would cry to see what the insides become. I want to quote this copy of zoning regulations for Binghamton. It's not the current one, but this is the dark area is the area we're talking about. And some time ago, it was called an overlay district. It was a way of taking an area and saying, well, we can't exactly figure out how to zone it, so we'll allow for certain kinds of zoning. So I'm going to quote from the city regulation, at least back then. The intent of the OD2 overlay district is to designate those areas where specialized commercial, personal, service, civic, cultural, and office activities are of citywide and regional significance should be encouraged as alternative uses of existing large residential structures. Restrictions and controls will be aimed at preserving the historic value and residential character of the district by limiting the size and range of permitted uses. I hope that language has carried on to current zoning. I've been before this board a few times in my history. One of the significant things that you people have to decide on is how it affects the neighborhood. So in many uses, the person developing a piece of property has to notify all their neighbors within a certain distance. Well, you've heard from many of the neighbors already, because buildings of this sort, we are all the neighbors. Everybody in this room, we all care about this building. And if we are going to show some kind of vote about the way you should go, it's not going to be student housing. It is not the highest and best use. In my opinion, it's the lowest and worst use. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jana Rudler. I'm the Director of Development at the Bundy Museum of History and Art on Main Street. And I know what it's like to steward a historic house. And every day that I work there, I see how fragile our history is, how easily it can be lost. That building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It was built in 1892, and the architect was Alfred Martu. And you know, we know stories of the families that lived there. You know, and you can research a building and you can learn its story, but there's nothing like walking through it and seeing its story. And a building like the Davidge Mansion has historic character all through it. And a lot of times, the woodwork, the craftsmanship, these things are irreplaceable in a historic building. But a lot of times they're the only remaining testament of a life lived. The craftspeople who built that house, you know, that may be the only remaining legacy that they have. I'm also the Southern Tier field consultant for the Preservation League of New York State. And it's the League's position to support adaptive reuse of an old building as long as you preserve the architectural details and the historic integrity of that building. I think that it's hard to imagine a worse fate for the Davidge Mansion than being turned into student housing. Like Mr. Brighton just mentioned, Riverside Drive is lined with houses that look okay on the outside, but if you go in, it's just a crying shame what you see that's missing. If you have an opportunity to decide to preserve a historic house, and not every historic house can become a museum like the Bundy or the Feltz or the Roberson. Not every house should. But you know, it's up to the community to look after these houses and to make sure that they endure. And community members can show up and speak in support of preserving these houses. They can also become members of the past of the Preservation League and you know, really work toward preserving these houses in their midst. So I'm really proud to live in a community where people will turn out like this in support of a house. But you know, working in the Bundy Museum day after day, I see how things might have gone differently for that particular house. It could have become just like the houses across the street from it, which is a couple of them are real eyesores. So, you know, I'd like to see you vote no for this particular proposition, and I'd like to see the property owner and the community come up with a better solution and a more thoughtful plan for the building. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gus Cooley, and I'm here to speak on behalf of this project. I've known Josh Bishop for 10 years now, and I can speak to his integrity, and by that I mean he's a man of his word. With that in mind, I'd like to bring up these points. Mr. Bishop is not an out-of-town developer, excuse me. He's hands-on and present, lives here in Binghamton. Mr. Bishop takes great pride in his properties. When renovating, Mr. Bishop spares no expense, often going above and beyond code requirements. He doesn't just throw Band-Aids on buildings or properties. His properties are beautiful. When he's finished with them, they're absolutely beautiful. Mr. Bishop has a large maintenance crew, local jobs being provided. Mr. Bishop is 100% committed to the historical preservation of the mansion. He's gone as far to incorporate extra cleaning services and is going to perform bi-weekly inspections of the historic part of the property to keep abreast of the building's condition. I don't think it's any big secret that we all know that Binghamton University is now the lifeblood of this community. Manufacturing's gone and it's not coming back. And it's going to be that way for the foreseeable future. The students are an asset, not a liability. Let's not let this grand old building fall into the hands of an absentee slumlord. Please allow Mr. Bishop to move forward with his plans, both for the economic vitality it will bring and for the preservation of our local history. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Marola Zuhone. I am a tenant living at 33 Front Street, next door on the northern boundary of 31 Front Street. I've been living there for 25 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the neighborhood, the characteristics of the neighborhood, the neighbors, good neighbors, bad neighbors, the birds, the bees, the squirrels, the chips, the chucks, the jacks, everything. So I've been renting and living above this professional office at 33 Front Street, neighboring the north side of this property, 31 Front Street. My neighborhood is charmingly unique and visually magical. By day, the neighborhood is bustling like an urban core. By evening, calmness settles in. It's amazing in the winter. Living in an area with such rich cultural history, surrounded by diverse structures with opulent architecture, and by civic and community centers and activities in a walkable community close to a flourishing and vibrant downtown, is truly a privilege and honor that has given me a fondness and sincere appreciation for my neighborhood in this city. I was a SUNY student who came here in 1991. I moved off campus to the area of St. John Avenue when I was a junior, and I found a lovely little want ad for this particular property at 33 Front Street. I live above an orthodontic clinic that has been operating, I believe, since 1983 or 85. I have kind of become the steward for my own property. I keep my eyes on my neighbor's property and mine, and in the years that I've been there, I've actually had good relations with the property owners next door at 31 Front Street. If ever there was an issue or something out of place or a gutter falling off the roof, nothing that a phone call wouldn't fix. So it's good to know that there was two-way communication and receptiveness on the part of the property owner to actually get feedback. Over the last decade, the community witnessed exciting and refreshing transformations along the Front Street Historic Corridor, also along Main Street, downtown, among many other areas of the city. I respectfully commend the public and private efforts and partnerships to rejuvenate the area. However, a disturbing trend in the number of special use permit approvals to convert neighborhood offices into solely multi-unit dwellings is happening with more frequency and intensity. Regrettably, the unintended cumulative impacts from these spot approvals are beginning to significantly change the character of this historic neighborhood. I feel that the conversion of the historic Decker Davidge mansion into multi-unit dwellings only, in essence, is dormitory suites, and it may exacerbate this situation. In the city's comp plan, you've heard this before, Blueprint Binghamton, the Land Use Recommendations 2.2 encourages floor plans in multifamily developments that are appropriate for a variety of end users and that don't restrict the potential for different types of inhabitants in the future. Once the Decker mansion is partitioned into 34 bedrooms among 4 units, or 3 to 5 as the original application indicated, the potential for future and adaptive creative uses becomes significantly narrowed and more costly to reverse. R2 Development LLC, which I believe is still the current property owner, has been a good neighbor since 2011. It was quite refreshing to see them come in. Nice to see more life back into that property once Roberson disposed of it. There's been a nice mix of professional office uses since they occupied the site. It's been sad to see many of them go. The turnover has been tremendously high. Not sure why that is, not my personal property. However, it's a concern, and obviously a concern for the developer that they're marketing this location to move. However, also note that Enjoy the City has done such a great job. They've expanded and can't even fit in this location anymore. So good for them, kudos to them. R2 Development took great pride in the upkeep of this property when they first moved on board. They had a small maintenance staff. They were like no other, hacking away at that knotweed every spring. Granted, the knotweed right now is probably the last thing I have as a visual buffer between me and the neighboring property and any unsightly development that might occur. However, in the last 2 years, that upkeep of the property has completely gone down the toilet. It's been very, very sad to watch, and I'm only dreading what's coming next. So there's been a decline over the last few years in that upkeep, which I'm wondering if might negatively be affecting their marketing efforts for an adaptive reuse. There's been a carpet left in the driveway now for well over a year and a half. There are 2 broken lights out front. There's a flashing light over the carport, carriage port, because the new bulbs don't work in old fixtures. The trees are completely feeling the pain. More recently, in the last 2 years, the owner made much-needed improvements to the front concrete steps that were crumbling, and they also expanded on-site parking. And this, I believe, was a result of their CAUD declination of a no-go for an expansion of a parking lot on the opposite side of the green space on the south end of the property. Sadly, in order to accommodate about 10 additional parking spaces, the carriage port steps and railings were removed on the north side of the property, and a portion of the front yard was completely paved over, only for 10 parking spaces. The large European beech tree in the front yard, now surrounded by impervious surface, is sending visible distress signals through dropping limbs during high wind events. You can ask anybody that walks their dog through that property, any of the churchgoers, even myself. We're picking up branches in that driveway that are literally landing and breaking like cork. I'm very concerned about that tree. And if ever this proposal or something similar as intensive as this goes through, I would recommend or request that this planning commission make sure that that unique tree on that property does not come down where I live or in the parking lot of 31 Front Street, thus impacting the folks at St. Pat's, et cetera, et cetera. If 9 parking spaces are all that is required, and there are at least 24 to 29 on site, I am respectfully asking that if this proposal is adopted, that you ask that that grassed area be returned so that we can lessen any further damage to that tree. It also provides a stormwater benefit. Less impervious surface creates more runoff, and for anybody that's been in that intersection of Leroy and Front Street, you know it's a pond after a major event. So, the landscape buffer area between 31 and 33 has significantly deteriorated over the years and become overrun with Japanese knotweed and grapevines that choke out otherwise healthy shrubs and flowering trees. I am very pleased to see Michael Haas behind me, as he was the landscape architect who actually worked with R2 Development in 2012 to see that their landscape plan was sufficient. So I'm a little relieved there. While I embrace our growing student population, I was one myself, and the positive economic impacts they bring in the area, there have been numerous issues with increased student population density in the C5 neighborhood. These include significant noise disturbances, mostly after hours. Remember, parties don't start till at least after 10 o'clock, and the noise ordinance is really just kicking in at 10 p.m. We get a lot of disturbances at 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm not certain about the apartment building across the street, but I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. So hearing kids come up and down the street as they migrate from party to party to party or pass through people's yards, as Ms. Iacobelli stated, it's very irritating. It's not really what I signed up for, and I don't believe it's what this community expects.
We definitely appreciate your comments.
Yes. It's hard to believe that the only reuse for this beautiful and historic property is that of dense, multi-unit housing only. A mixed use would be more appropriate, perhaps a combination of the two. I'm respectfully asking that the Commission oppose this request for a special use permit and take a good look at the cumulative impacts as a result of these actions on the larger scale across Front Street. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Robert Murphy. I'm Director of Economic Development for the City of Binghamton. I guess that's one hat. The second hat is a resident of the City of Binghamton. I guess the third hat would be 3 of my 4 children were baptized at St. Pat's. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I do walk and ride my bike to work most days. And I'm very familiar with the detritus that's generally left over around 12, 10, and 6 Riverside, along with, I believe, 23, correct me if I'm wrong, Front. I think at the beginning of this, I want to say on behalf of the city of Binghamton is that this is not consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city of Binghamton, and as a result of which I feel the need to respond to the application, in that it said that this is economic development. As Director of Economic Development, I would be remiss in not addressing that point. I do not believe this is an economic development, a positive economic development situation, in that we have a $30 to $40 million project at 50 Front Street. We have a major tourist an educational museum with Robertson Museum there. We have the other residential, the speakers, owners of the property, I believe at 33 and 35 Front Street as well. I think at this point in time that there has been enough, and I believe the applicant was told by various members of the city of Binghamton that this project is a bridge too far, don't do this. I think as well, and I think that this is not, I think, it was also told that probably get a crowd like this here as well, and here it comes. I just want to state I'm very proud to be both as a resident of the city of Binghamton and as an employee of the city of Binghamton, just how well-mannered and thoughtful both the pro and anti positions have been put in. I think it's shown a lot of respect to each other, and I think that's one of the great things about the city along the way. But I will say ditto to most of the things regarding both that students are both a positive economic development issue for us, but it's just like that. It's not an unalloyed good that sometimes does need to be checked. And secondly, Binghamton is not in a position, I would say 15, 20 years ago, we probably had to accept just about anything that came down the pike. And I think we're past that now. We're at a point where I think the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, CAUD can do thoughtful expressions of where the city should be heading rather than where it had been in the past and that we would be so desperate as to take anything that comes along. And I'm not saying that the application doesn't have certain, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think it fits into the neighborhood. I understand why they are putting the project forward, but I don't think it works, and I don't think it's going to benefit the economic development. I did talk to the developer of 50 Front Street, and the owners of that property have said that they have a tenant, about a 10,000 square foot space, that has informed them that the tenant will not come to their place if this student housing is put in, just on the burden of that for the neighborhood. That it would be a trend, a negative trend in that. And one thing that we can say, when I purchased 97 Riverside in 2000, it was Spiritualist Church, which was on its last legs. The property next door to me was nearly vacant and looking pretty rough. Across the street was Dr. Wilson's house, and was the deceased and empty, and then next to that was another empty house. Then followed that was an almost empty house. In the preceding times, all those houses are now full with families and are proceeding forward. So the essence that these properties cannot be brought back and is I think a fallacy. And I think that bringing this neighborhood, I think very impressed that the number of people have come in to basically, I think what they feel is to support the neighborhood, support St. Patrick's, and support Robertson and the whole neighborhood. I think it's a generally positive thing. I think there are other places to do this, and it doesn't have to be in a historic home. Thank you very much.
I'll be quick. My name is Heather DeLorme. We live at 44 Oak Street, which is right by St. Patrick's Church. We live right next door to where the nuns have lived for years and years, and we've restored that house and saved it, and I'm thrilled that we did it. But right across the street, we just got a letter. They wanted to turn Sullivan's Funeral Home into a 21-bed student housing. Next door to that, Dr. Hogan's house has already been turned into 10 beds, which I don't think have been full ever. So right there, directly across from our house is 30-some beds of student housing, not to mention all up and down the street is all pretty much student housing now. And then this is going to be right behind us too. My question for the city is, are there no guidelines? When is an area saturated? When is enough enough? And enough's enough. We've got a lot, and we've done our part to welcome the students and make people feel welcome, but enough's enough. Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Whalen from 8 Chapin Street. For most of my life, all of my life, I've lived in the city of Binghamton. And mostly on the south side. I bought up a number of houses as some of the old folks passed away, just to keep the neighborhood from being overrun by slumlords. And we've done a good job. Myself and some other neighbors have bought up a number of houses over there, and generally made a decent profit renting to sons and daughters of people in the neighborhood, parents of people who no longer want to maintain their homes. And so recently my fiance and I bought a beautiful old home on Chapin Street because, well, it's a beautiful old home, and it's stunning. And there's a lot of beautiful old homes in the neighborhood. And what we really like is it's close to downtown. You have pathways to get both to downtown and back to the south side. And I've had the good fortune of meeting a number of my neighbors. And these are terrific people. They're fighters. The people that are still in Binghamton, the residents, the homeowners, we're fighters. We're fighting to keep the community from going down the toilet. They've come here tonight and they've asked you to not change the rules of the game in their neighborhoods. Don't make these changes to benefit one person, because it works adversely to the people who make these viable, healthy neighborhoods. And I think we all know what's driving all this student housing. It's the tax breaks. Now, I don't know if this developer has put in for one. I know most of them do. They generally get them. And it's funny, you've got in one of the poorest school districts in New York State, you've got multimillionaires asking for multi-million-dollar tax breaks to house young people who are from, upper-income families from Westchester and Suffolk and Nassau County, and our children, they're taking tax dollars out of the mouths or out of the education system of our children. So that's what's driving all this, and sooner or later it's got to stop. And I know you folks don't have anything to do with that, but you do hold the switch to make it possible for developers to come in and make these in some sense it is an economic development thing, but it's only developing the economic interests of one or two people. It's not helping the neighborhoods. So I'm asking on behalf of all the folks here tonight, don't change the rules of the game. Let them stay, let them fight for a better Binghamton, let them fight for their own neighborhoods, and either table this or turn it down. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? All right. Seeing no one, we'll the opportunity. It didn't go well.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes. Okay, there's a lot of concerns here, and I understand many of them. There's two big things here that people are concerned with, and I am too. The historical character of this building, I think, is probably number one. Number two, student housing. I understand a lot of this. A lot of people here think there's too much student housing. I get that. People think there's a glut. From our experience, and we manage over 800 beds of student housing, we are not seeing a glut. We've been doing this for 9 years now. I've been in town for 10 years now. We're a hands-on landlord. We do a great job, and our tenants really enjoy us, and we don't have a problem filling our beds. So just to go over a few misconceptions here. So there's not 9 spots on the property. There's actually 26. Which I think is plenty for 34 people. We usually don't have every single tenant have a car. There's a lot of great points brought up here. So the Whitney House on Front Street, this is a great example of an out-of-town landlord not managing his property properly. That's not us. That's not what we do. We're an example of the opposite of that. So managing a property like 31 Front Street, we're here. Our office is 2 blocks away. We have a team of 10 maintenance people. We fix the problems quickly and efficiently. There were concerns about the repairing of the outside of the building. We definitely plan to do that. There's lots of painting that can be done. This is not expensive. We do it ourselves. It's well within our budget to do. We're looking to improve this property and preserve it. One of the speakers mentioned that it has gone into disrepair. I don't like seeing that either, so we'd like to preserve it and improve it. This property's been available for about 2 years now for lease. The owners were trying to lease it commercially. They could not find a tenant. There's not a tenant willing to pay what this owner wanted in rent. On art gallery is a great idea, but I haven't heard of an $800,000 art gallery in Binghamton. It just doesn't exist, and it wouldn't pay the mortgage. There's a speaker here from the LGBTQ group at BU. That's a perfect example of the kind of group of students that we'd like to put in this building, and it doesn't have to be students. We have 6-bedroom units. We don't discriminate, so we offer our housing to anybody. But a group like the LGBTQ group, I think, would be perfect here. We're not going for a fraternity. We're not going for a group that would party and trash the house. We're going for responsible individuals. Groups like that, academic groups, I think would be a perfect fit for this house. There's compromises here, I think. I would be willing to amend the application to drop the large 16-bed unit down to just 6. So it would be 4 6-bedroom units, which I think are well within the comprehensive plan and have been approved, numerously in this area. That amount of bedrooms would allow for a family to rent these units if students were not the ones to lease it, and they could easily be switched back to a commercial use. Just to go over the floor plan, the reason that we're keeping the front portion of the mansion as one unit is because it preserves that mansion. There are ideas here to chop it up and do a portion of it as mixed use. That would require changing the mansion. That would require taking down walls or adding walls and making changes to the beautiful woodwork here. We're not looking to do that. So that's the reason we're trying to keep it as one unit. And then there still would be no changes to the first floor or the second floor of the front of the mansion. This would all be preserved. I think that's most of what I have. We'd be looking to do 4 6-bedroom units, 24 beds. That's exactly how much parking we have. We have a garbage service that we use. We pay for it. It takes care of all the garbage every week. Our maintenance people take care of all the trash outside of our properties every single day. So trash, parking, noise, I don't think is an issue. We have a beautiful plan here for the landscaping. We'd really like to improve this property, and we think this plan is the best way to do that. I've talked to other landlords that were interested in this building, and they, like one of the other speakers said, he was looking to chop it up into 1-bedroom units. That would completely get rid of the historical character of the building. Are there any questions that I can answer? would 4 6-bedroom units be something the planning commission would be more inclined to see?
Anyone want to answer that directly?
It still doesn't meet the comprehensive plan. I mean, it's market rate housing is 1, 2, possibly 3-bedroom apartments. That would rent to any 6-bedroom apartment. You can call it market rate, say whatever it is, but it's still geared toward one group of individuals. The comprehensive plan, I have to sit here and agree with everything that was said here tonight about where we're at with student housing. And I cannot believe that this building can't be used for something other than that. A number of times, only one vote, but I cannot vote for this project.
Yeah, it's been available for 2 years, and the owner has just not been able to find anything else to do with the building. These ideas are great, but they want a lot of money for the building. There's nobody else that was able to do anything with it.
I think it's time to get the economic development teams that we have throughout the county. You got the city of Binghamton, you got Brooklyn County, you got the county, you got Bethel. You have, I don't know how many of these groups. Every municipality has one. New York State also. You know, how are we marketing ourselves? Do we market ourselves to the city? You got New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Montreal. Do we do any of that? No. We should be doing that. That way, buildings like this throughout the United States, they don't put student housing. They do other things. Usually they become some sort of a professional building is beyond me. But I can't sit here and not see anything anymore. I mean, it's just, so Bob, the city should be involved. We had one of the legislators here. What's the county going to do to get involved and try to market not just this building, but the rest of the buildings that we have? That's something we need to be doing. And maybe instead of having 10 of these organizations, we have one with representation from each community so that we're not fighting each other.
Okay. Again, they've been trying to do something with this building and they haven't been able to. It's just they've reached out to numerous people. They worked with Pyramid Brokerage for 2 years trying to do something here. They weren't able to. They're one of the biggest brokerages in upstate New York, and they weren't able to find a tenant. They weren't able to find a buyer. I think 6 bedrooms is very reasonable with 4 units here. The volume here for a residential purpose is much lower than commercial as well. The wear and tear with 4 6-bedroom units, I think, would be far less if this was turned into something commercially available. There were over 60 people working for the company that previously occupied this building. We'd only have 24 in there, and we monitor them. What we would do is, I think I already mentioned this, but we'd have every 2 weeks a cleaner that's trained in cleaning historical woodwork. They'd be in the building every single day, maintaining all the historical character of the building. There would also be eyes on the property to let us know if there was any excessive wear and tear. We would be in there to fix it.
Well, I'll add on what Art said. When I say I agree with him with 6-bedroom units. Based on all the comments, I don't think they meet the comprehensive plan.
Okay. How many bedrooms does meet the comprehensive plan?
Zero.
Oh, that's not true.
I don't know what the number would be.
Yeah.
Something that's not tailored to a specific group, I guess. So.
Okay.
3 bedrooms is more of a.
Is 4 bedrooms reasonable for an apartment?
I'm not sure.
So, Sorry. Go
I think the other thing that maybe to give you a chance to talk about, there were a lot of comments about changing the character of the neighborhood. Do you want to respond specifically to that?
Sure. I mean, I know there's a lot of students in the neighborhood. Down at the lower end of Front Street, there's a bit less. You have the museum and a couple offices, but the vast majority of Front Street, and we know because we own numerous buildings on it, are made up of students. And housing. There's other types of housing as well. You know, we're not looking to put a fraternity in here. We're not looking to change this building. This building was built as a residence. It's a beautiful mansion. The purpose of this building was for people to live in it. We're a responsible landlord, and we're looking to have responsible people live in it again.
So one thing, so I think all of us probably, we know you, we've seen your projects, and I don't think anybody would argue that what you do as a landlord maintenance company, you seem to keep your properties in very good shape. But we have to look at it in terms of maybe 2 years from now, something happens and you think Binghamton and sell all your properties and they go to some other real landlord who's not going to be keeping them up the way that you do.
Right.
I know that's a big part for me because I know what you do and the comments that people made about your projects.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes this difficult because I know you probably do it right.
Yeah. So would a mixed-use project here be more appealing? Keeping the front portion, it used to be attorney's offices in there. The back portion is very much suited to residential. It's already the same layout as when it was a convent. So there's bedrooms back there that were turned into offices. I think the 3 units in the back make a lot of sense for apartments. The front portion could be something like attorney's offices again, or some type of mixed use, which I think would make a lot of sense as well. So if we were to keep just 3 units in the back and do a mixed use, commercial use in the front for offices, I mean, is that something that would be appealing?
It would be to me.
Mr. Chairman, I understand and applaud the applicant's willingness to try to compromise. But at some point, the compromise becomes changing the site plan to the point where the public is not allowed to have input on the revised site plan.
Okay.
So the appropriate would be is if you wanted to withdraw this application and submit a new application, we have to go through this process again. If that's something you want to explore, that would be the way to do it. That'd be appropriate. It may be appropriate in the circumstances.
Oh, I think so. It sounds that way. So I'd be definitely willing to, you know, withdraw this, table it, and come back with a revised plan.
I'm not sure that you have to withdraw it. I know this is overspoken on that.
Table it.
But you can amend it, and what we would be doing is we would ask you to submit the materials, and they would have to go through the process again, and then set up for another public hearing.
Okay.
Either this month, the next month, or the following month, probably more likely.
Okay.
Just because of the volume of material you're going to provide.
That works for me. Yeah.
If we're going to do that, my suggestion would be to get with Todd Murphy and make sure that whatever changes, whatever you're thinking, fits in with what the city is looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Table.
I would ask that you make a motion that the applicant's request that matter be tabled for 2 months to allow him to submit an amended site plan application and for public hearing in 2 months.
All right. All right, I'll make a motion to table the project at the applicant's request for the revision and resubmission of the revised plan. Second by Harris, all in favor? 7-0 opposed.
Thank you.
Hold on 1 second, Josh. We do have the option to schedule the public hearing for March now. Do you think you would be able to?
Yeah, that's definitely enough time. Yeah.
What I would ask is that if you try to get the information in to us in February, so ready to go.
Okay.
All right, so I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for March,
What's that date? I say give him enough time to sit down with the city or anybody else to come up with a viable
I guess what I would say is that I think that the motion for March is not inappropriate. However, if the applicant wants to request additional time, that would be considered up.
I think a month is fine to prepare.
Motion for March. All right, say by Paul, all in favor? All right, 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Do we know the date for March yet?
March 11th.
Okay.
All right. Hey,
Thanks, everyone.
before the public leaves, so obviously there was an enormous outcry about how we're at a saturation rate of student housing, and there are some of your city council members are here tonight. I would definitely encourage you to grab them now, or write to them and tell them that this is how you're feeling, because we keep having these projects come in and 10 people show up and everybody says the same thing. We're oversaturated. We can't do any more student housing. But it's not getting back to city council, or there's no action on it. So if you really feel this way, you need your voices to be heard by your city council people who could actually do something about it. All we can do is review the plans that come in front of us. And our hands are a little bit tied if they meet the requirements of the zoning code. So I encourage you to talk to your city council members about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hey, John.
Yes.
All right. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break before we go on to the next project.